As I'm coming up on 1.5 years on board my 2019 Royal Enfield Continental GT 650, I thought it was about time that I made a long-term review. Currently, the weather in Michigan is what you'd expect in late December. Ice and salt cover the road and dark snow clouds cover the sky. Besides that, my bike is currently ripped apart as I'm installing a slew of new parts to take my Royal Enfield Continental GT 650 into 2021 as the 2.0 version of itself. Some of those videos are already live, so when you're done with this video, head to my channel to check them out. With that being said, this seems to be the perfect time to take a step back and really think through all of the ups and downs of owning my 2019 Royal Enfield for the past 1.5 years. Before I jump into the video, I wanted to ask you all to take a moment and click that like button and that subscribe button. As I continue to create new and exciting content around my Royal Enfield, Ducati, and my project car, it would mean the world to me if you came along for the ride. Now, the 2019 Royal Enfield Continental GT 650. Why did I choose it? Well, when I was living in Berlin, Germany in 2018, there was a Royal Enfield dealership that had a collection of Continental 535s. I even made a video on YouTube about seeing the bike for the first time. And I've had this weird hunch that I needed to be part of the Royal Enfield brand for a few years before I jumped in. At the time, I was looking to sell my Yamaha MT-07 to jump into more of a classic styling of a cafe racer. I looked to drive motorcycles a lot. The Thruxton had my heart as it was that slim cafe racer that really called to me, but at almost $13,000 it was just too much. I wanted to be able to work on this motorcycle myself, really make it the bike that I wanted it to be, and when you start with a bike that's that high of a price, it's hard to find additional money to start tweaking it. Then, out of nowhere, Royal Enfield launched the GT 650 platform, creating the more aggressive Continental GT 650 and the more relaxed Scrambler version, the Interceptor 650. Both based around the same 648cc power plant with a few ergonomic changes. The Continental GT has cafe racer clip-on handlebars, rear set foot controls, and a fuel tank covered for tucking knees in more aggressive riding position. When I moved to Michigan in March of 2019, the pre-orders were already open for the bike for a few months. Obviously not the best thing, as I wanted to get the bike as soon as possible to start creating YouTube content around it. I went to the local dealership and spoke with the owner and got myself on the list. A few weeks later, I got a call saying the very first Continental GT 650 was now available as the original owner backed out last minute. So I jumped into my truck and drove to the shop to sign the paperwork for my new motorcycle. I don't know why I jumped up the list so quickly, but here I was with the very first Continental GT 650 in Michigan, and I was itching to ride it and start filling my social media channels with all things Royal Enfield. After 1.5 years of owning the Royal Enfield, there are a lot of things that I love about the bike, but not everything can be positive, so I'm going to break down a few of the highs and the lows of the bike right now. The 648cc air-cooled twin engine is wonderful. To me, it's the perfect mix of torque and horsepower for the bike. And there are a lot of people out there complaining about the lack of horsepower for the platform, but 47 horsepower for a cafe racer is more than enough in my mind. If you're looking to ride with a pack of sport bikes, it's not going to be enough. But if you're just bopping around town, hitting up coffee shops, you will have nothing to complain about. That being said, the bike is capable of hitting some higher speeds, but it really likes to be in that 50 to 65 mile an hour range. As for the transmission, this was one of the negative experiences for the Continental GT 650. When the bike was new, it would miss shifts every once in a while and jump into a false neutral. This happened a few times in the first 1,000 miles, but over time the transmission became smoother as it continued to break in. And I've seen a few complaints about people wishing that the 5th and 6th gear would be taller for higher speeds, but let me tell you, I don't think that's needed. This bike does not need to go above 80 miles an hour, so what do you really need those higher gears for? The brakes on the Royal Enfield are nothing to write home about, but they do their job. I've thought about upgrading the brake pads to a pair of Brembos for around $50 in the spring to give them a little more bite into the caliper, but they will do just fine for normal riding. If you wanted to take it on track, I would definitely look into getting a bigger brake setup. The suspension of the Royal Enfield is a mixed bag, as I'm 5'10" and 190 pounds, so I'm not huge, but I'm not small. I ride my bike a bit more aggressive than the normal rider, and I wish it had stiffer suspension front and rear. I've recently purchased a rear shock absorber set from K-Speed in Thailand, and that video actually goes live soon, and I can't wait to experience the difference. YSS and Öhlins have recently launched suspension upgrades for the front of the bike as well, but no one has them in stock, so it's been hard to get your hands on them. Maybe one day I'll be able to get them, and watch out for that video. The fuel gauge on the Royal Enfield is awful, and it's never worked properly. I talk about this a lot in my riding vlogs, and people are obnoxious about my complaints. The whole, back in my day you never needed a fuel gauge, or the just shake the bike and see if it splashes around comments are seen on every video. Well, it's 2020, and I'd expect a bike that comes standard with a fuel gauge for it to actually work. As for the footrest, I find it very difficult to use the brake level on the right side. My foot doesn't really tuck well underneath the engine, so I've either missed it or I've had to shift my foot forward and use the inside of the ball of my foot to really engage it. I did purchase a pair of K-Speed rear sets to install onto the bike, and without riding it on the road yet, I can already tell it's the perfect fix for my issue, as it really scoots my feet farther back, allowing more clearance. As for the original tires, I replaced them about 6 months of owning the bike. They felt cheap and way too hard to ever grab the pavement. I never felt comfortable leaning the bike into the corners, and I replaced them with the Michelin Pilot Active tires after I found a nail in my tire, and it was a night and day difference. I'd highly recommend that anyone buying a 650 immediately swap out their tires because it transforms the bike. While there were some frustrations with initial quality from the factory, I've had only a few issues with my Royal Enfield, and I'm well beyond that 2,500 mile mark. I've spoke to a few people, especially in India, that have already put 15,000 miles on their bikes without any issue whatsoever. That being said, I've seen people with a few hundred miles with some issues with rust on the frame or issues with their valves. I think it's all luck of the draw, but I'd expect Royal Enfield to only improve with the bikes in the future. There have been a few over-tightened bolts on the bike that I've discovered while working on it. One of the more hilarious issues that I've dealt with were the bar ends that screw into the handlebars. They were stripped so bad from the factory that I had to literally chisel them out to gain access to the grips. Quite the ordeal that a lot of people on the internet have made fun of me for. As for rust or corrosion, it has slept inside the garage ever since I bought it. There's absolutely no rust whatsoever on the bike so far, and as long as I keep it clean, I don't think we'll see anything appear. At 6,000 miles, the service interval for the 650 is pretty far apart, so more time on the road and less time in the shop. That being said, I feel like the bike was built with a DIY mechanic in mind. While I did not handle the 600 mile break and service myself, moving forward I will handle everything myself. And one of the biggest frustrations with the motorcycle when I first bought it was the lack of aftermarket parts available for it. Nothing was available, no exhaust, no turn signals, seat cowls, nothing. Here I was wanting to build up my bike, and for the life of me I could not find a single part to modify my bike. Over time this started to change. Companies like Red Rooster, SNS, and K&N started to make more and more parts for it, but it took almost an entire year before this could happen. I've recently spent almost $800 on a bunch of parts from K-Speed in Thailand that I'm pretty damn excited for. Honestly, once they are installed, I'm going to paint the tank and I'm going to be officially done with the Royal. I say that, but who knows. As for the dealership experience, there were some issues. Purchasing the bike went smooth, but during the first service they dropped the ball a few times. They did not work on my bike when I dropped it off, and they ended up performing the service on another Royal Enfield instead of mine. So I was out almost $100 due to Uber cost to go there and come back, and then I had to do it again to go pick up my bike. And before you tell me I should have called and confirmed my bike was ready, I did. They told me it was, and it took me being there in person to realize that this was not my bike that they worked on. Since then, another dealership in Michigan has started carrying Royal Enfield, and I've started going there much more often. As for the total cost of my bike so far, I made an entire video on that. It's been roughly about $10,000 after the purchase, taxes, insurance, gasoline, aftermarket parts, and etc. Go watch the other video if you really want to see that detailed out. Someone told me that the bike seemed friendly, and I've really enjoyed using that phrase to describe it. It's modern, reliable, and most importantly, it's affordable. The longer the bike is out on the market, the more I see people wanting it. I think they were afraid for a while of a new bike. but Royal Enfield has done a great job of bringing a bike to the market. Overall, I'd say the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650 is a bike that's greater than the sum of its parts. One thing I've noticed a lot is how much attention this bike grabs. No matter if I'm at a car show or in front of a coffee shop, people stop to check it out. Out of the multiple bikes I own, I tend to really gravitate towards this bike. It provides hours of confident fun without intimidating me. It's the best bike to jump on and just go for a ride. Once again, it's a friendly bike. And as we come to a close, I want you all to know that I'm going to be keeping this bike as we move into 2021 and 2022. I think it's a wonderful platform and brings nothing but smiles. If you have any questions on what I discussed or any interest in the bike, drop your comment below and I'll make sure to get to it. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and now go out there and ride safe.